Inside Pelican Bay, how the Aryan Brotherhood built an empire behind bars. The concrete box measures 8 feet by 10 feet. No windows, no sunlight. Just a steel door with a slot barely wide enough for a food tray. In 1989, California built this place to end the bloodshed. They called it the Security Housing Unit. Discretion. They said no one could run a criminal empire from inside these walls. They were wrong. By 2006, federal prosecutors had uncovered something impossible. From cells designed for total isolation, leaders of the Aryan Brotherhood had orchestrated 40 murders across multiple states. They'd moved drugs worth millions. They'd recruited soldiers they would never meet face to face. And they'd done it all from the most secure prison in America. The question wasn't whether it happened. The evidence filled courtrooms. The question was how. How do you build an empire when you can't even see the sky? How do you give orders when guards monitor every word? How do you kill someone when you're locked in a box 23 hours a day? This is the story of the most powerful prison gang in American history. And the prison that was supposed to destroy them. But first we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to a time when California's prisons were drowning in blood. And back to the moment when desperate men made a choice that would haunt the system for decades.
If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content.
Inside Pelican Bay, how the Aryan Brotherhood built an empire behind bars. The concrete box measures 8 feet by 10 feet. No windows, no sunlight. Just a steel door with a slot barely wide enough for a food tray. In 1989, California built this place to end the bloodshed. They called it the Security Housing Unit. Discretion. They said no one could run a criminal empire from inside these walls. They were wrong. By 2006, federal prosecutors had uncovered something impossible. From cells designed for total isolation, leaders of the Aryan Brotherhood had orchestrated 40 murders across multiple states. They'd moved drugs worth millions. They'd recruited soldiers they would never meet face to face. And they'd done it all from the most secure prison in America. The question wasn't whether it happened. The evidence filled courtrooms. The question was how. How do you build an empire when you can't even see the sky? How do you give orders when guards monitor every word? How do you kill someone when you're locked in a box 23 hours a day? This is the story of the most powerful prison gang in American history. And the prison that was supposed to destroy them. March 14, 2006. A federal courthouse in Santa Ana, California. 16 defendants sat in orange jumpsuits behind bulletproof glass. 4 of them faced the death penalty. The charges read like something from a crime novel. Racketeering. Conspiracy to commit murder. Drug trafficking. Witness intimidation. But these weren't street criminals. These men had been locked in solitary confinement for years. Some for over a decade. The lead prosecutor stood before the jury. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Phone records showing calls placed from prison visitor centers. Letters written in invisible ink made from urine and fruit juice. Coded messages hidden inside greeting cards sent to family members. And testimony. So much testimony. From former members who'd flipped. From guards who'd been paid off. From victims who'd survived assassination attempts. One murder stood out. It happened in 2002 at a federal prison in Beaumont, Texas. A prisoner named Frank Joyner walked into the recreation yard. He was serving time for bank robbery. Nothing violent. He'd kept his head down for 3 years. That morning, 3 inmates approached him. They didn't say a word. One held him. The other 2 stabbed him 37 times. Guards found him in a pool of blood. He died before the ambulance arrived. The killers were arrested immediately. They went to solitary. They refused to talk. Investigators couldn't figure out the motive. Joyner had no gang affiliations. No debts. No enemies anyone could identify. The case went cold. Then the FBI got a break. A wiretap on a phone in Crescent City, California. Pelican Bay State Prison. A conversation between a visitor and an inmate in the SHU. The inmate's name was Barry Mills. The visitor was his wife. They talked about family. About memories. About a recipe for chocolate cake. Nothing suspicious. Until federal linguists analyzed the conversation. Every third word. Every pause. Every seemingly random detail. It was code. And buried in that code was a direct reference to the Joyner murder. Barry Mills had ordered the hit. From a cell in Pelican Bay. Frank Joyner had testified against an Aryan Brotherhood member in a trial 6 years earlier. The AB never forgot. They waited until Joyner thought he was safe. Then they sent the message, "Nobody walks away." But Mills was just one piece. The investigation went deeper. For 4 years, federal agents had been intercepting communications across the entire California prison system. What they found was a network that shouldn't exist. The Aryan Brotherhood had roughly 200 members. Most were locked in maximum security facilities. Many were in the SHU at Pelican Bay. Yet they operated like a Fortune 500 company. They had a chain of command. A commission that voted on major decisions. Enforcers who carried out orders. Associates on the outside who handled money and contraband. They charged protection fees to white inmates throughout the California system. $20 a month. Paid in drugs or money sent to approved addresses. Inmates who refused? They got a visit from enforcers. Sometimes they got beaten. Sometimes they disappeared. The AB didn't make empty threats. They ran drug operations from inside prison walls. Heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine. They used visitors to smuggle product in. They used corrupt guards to move it between facilities. They used intimidation to control distribution. One former member testified that the AB made over $10 million from drug sales between 2000 and 2006. All coordinated from solitary confinement. The federal case revealed something else. Something that chilled investigators. The Aryan Brotherhood had written rules. A constitution. It was found during a cell search at Pelican Bay in 2005. Written in tiny letters on notebook paper. Hidden inside a legal document. The rules were specific. How to get in. How to get out. There was only one way out. The members who tried to leave were marked for execution. Their families were marked too. The AB didn't believe in retirement. Rule number 1 was simple. Blood in, blood out. To join the Aryan Brotherhood you had to kill. Not just participate. Not just watch. You had to be the one holding the weapon. And it had to be verified. Witnesses. Proof. The murder had to be done for the brand. Once you spilled blood you were property of the AB. Forever. The trial lasted 14 months. The longest criminal trial in Orange County history. Prosecutors presented over 1,000 pieces of evidence. Surveillance photos. Recorded phone calls. Confiscated letters. Testimonies from 60 witnesses. The jury heard stories of violence that seemed impossible for men locked in isolation. Stabbings coordinated across 3 states on the same day. Hits ordered with hand signals during court appearances. Entire prison riots started with a single coded phrase smuggled out in a birthday card. In 2006, 4 leaders were convicted and sentenced to death. Others got life sentences. Federal prosecutors called it a major victory. They said they'd broken the back of the Aryan Brotherhood. The media agreed. Headlines declared the end of America's most dangerous prison gang. But in 1989, none of this existed yet. The story begins with a single stabbing in a place that wasn't supposed to have violence anymore. It begins with a decision California made when prisons were drowning in blood. And it begins with men who learned that the only thing more dangerous than freedom is having nothing left to lose. San Quentin State Prison. 1964. If you were white and you went to prison in California you had a problem. The Mexican mafia controlled the drug trade. The black guerrilla family controlled the yard politics. Nuestra Familia controlled the Northern California pipeline. White inmates were scattered. Disorganized. Vulnerable. In prison vulnerability gets you killed. A group of Irish bikers from the San Francisco area decided that had to change. They called themselves the Diamond Tooth Gang at first. The Bluebird Gang. The Nazi Gang. Nothing stuck. Then someone suggested a new name. The Aryan Brotherhood. The brand. It sounded organized. Sounded powerful. Most importantly, it sounded like something worth fearing. The original members weren't ideologues. They weren't white supremacists in any political sense. They were criminals who needed protection and saw race as the easiest line to draw. If you were white and you needed backup in a fight, the AB would stand with you. In exchange, you followed orders. You paid dues. You showed loyalty. It was simple. It was effective. But protection rackets don't stay small. By 1967, the Aryan Brotherhood had expanded to Folsom Prison. Then Soledad. Then every major California facility. They went from defending white inmates to controlling them. Pay us or face consequences. Sell drugs for us or get stabbed. Inform on us and your family gets visited. The protection gang became a criminal enterprise. The violence escalated. In 1972, an AB member named Michael Thompson walked into the prison chapel at San Quentin. He was carrying a shank made from a sharpened bed frame. He walked up to a prisoner named William Bonner who was attending services. Bonner was black. He disrespected an AB member in the yard. Thompson stabbed him 17 times in front of witnesses. Guards rushed in. Thompson didn't run. He stood over the body and smiled. He got life without parole. He didn't care. He'd earned his patch. That became the AB calling card. Extreme violence. Public violence. Violence that sent a message. You didn't just kill enemies. You brutalized them. You made sure everyone watched. You made sure everyone remembered. Fear was currency. The more brutal your reputation, the more power you wielded. By the mid-1970s, the Aryan Brotherhood had a problem of their own. Success. They'd grown too large. Too visible. Law enforcement started targeting them specifically. Prison administrators started breaking up known AB members, scattering them across facilities. Prosecutors started building RICO cases. The brand needed to adapt or die. They made a decision that would define them for the next 50 years. They capped membership. No more open recruitment. No more accepting anyone who wanted in. From now on, the Aryan Brotherhood would be exclusive. Elite. You couldn't ask to join. You had to be invited. And invitations only came after you'd proven yourself worthy. The requirement was clear. Blood in, blood out. If the AB asked you to kill someone, you killed them. No questions. No hesitation. No excuses. You did it in front of witnesses so it could be verified. You did it knowing you'd spend years in solitary confinement as punishment. And you did it understanding that once you were in, there was no leaving. Ever. This changed everything. Suddenly the AB wasn't just another prison gang. They were an organization that demanded ultimate loyalty. Members knew that failing an order meant death. Leaving meant death. Cooperating with law enforcement meant your family died too. The stakes were total. And that made them unstoppable. In 1980, the AB had roughly 150 confirmed members across California prisons. But they controlled thousands of associates. White inmates who weren't members but who followed AB orders, paid AB taxes, and served AB interests. The ratio was brilliant. A small core of completely loyal killers directing a large network of foot soldiers. The soldiers took most of the risks. The members made the decisions. The money started flowing. The AB taxed every white inmate in California prisons who wanted protection. $20 a month didn't sound like much. But multiply that by thousands of inmates. Suddenly you're looking at $500,000 a year. Add drug trafficking, extortion, and contract killings for outside organizations, and the numbers became staggering. By the mid-1980s, federal investigators estimated the Aryan Brotherhood generated over $10 million annually from inside prison. But the violence kept growing. Between 1981 and 1985, California prisons saw a massive spike in inmate murders. Stabbings during meals. Stabbings in the yard. Stabbings in cells. Stabbings in the shower. Guards couldn't stop it. Separating gang members didn't work because associates carried out the hits. Adding more guards didn't work because the violence happened in seconds. Lockdowns didn't work because inmates had nothing but time. In 1983, the situation reached a breaking point. 9 inmates were murdered in California prisons that year alone. All 9 killings were linked to gang activity. 4 were directly tied to AB orders. The Mexican Mafia, the Black Guerrilla Family, and Nuestra Familia were also involved in the bloodshed. But the AB had become the most organized, the most disciplined, the most feared. Prison officials tried everything. They created special gang units. They used informants to break up conspiracies before they happened. They offered deals to members who would flip. Nothing worked. For every member who cooperated, 2 new recruits stepped up. For every murder they prevented, 3 more happened. The gangs had figured out how to operate faster than the system could respond. Then someone had an idea. A radical idea. What if they built a prison where gang members couldn't communicate at all? A prison where inmates lived in total isolation. No yard time with other prisoners. No shared cells. No contact visits. No way to pass messages. No way to give orders. No way to maintain a criminal organization. The theory was sound. Gangs needed communication to function. Cut the communication and you cut the power. Isolate the leaders and the whole structure collapses. It had never been tried on this scale before. But California was desperate. The violence was out of control. Guards were getting hurt. Inmates were dying every month. Something had to change. In 1986, the California Department of Corrections announced plans for a new facility. A Supermax prison designed specifically to house the state's most dangerous gang members. It would be built in the far northwest corner of California, in a town called Crescent City. 13 miles from the Oregon border. Surrounded by redwood forests. Isolated from everything. They called it Pelican Bay State Prison. And it was going to change everything. Construction began in 1986. The Security Housing Unit, the SHU, was the centerpiece. Hundreds of individual cells built for total isolation. Concrete and steel. No windows. No programs. No human contact. The most secure prison in America. The Aryan Brotherhood was about to face its greatest challenge. California was building a concrete tomb designed to bury them forever. The question was whether it would work. Because while California was building Pelican Bay, the AB was preparing too. They were learning, adapting, planning. They'd survived everything the system had thrown at them. They weren't about to let a new building stop them now. In 1989, Pelican Bay opened its doors. The first inmates transferred in were the worst of the worst. Gang leaders, shot callers, men who'd orchestrated murders from general population facilities. California thought it had won. They thought isolation would break the gangs. They thought the violence would finally stop. They built Pelican Bay to end the Aryan Brotherhood. Instead, they made them immortal.
If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content.
December 1989. The first inmates arrived at Pelican Bay in buses with blacked-out windows. They couldn't see where they were going. They couldn't see the redwood forests. They couldn't see the ocean 13 miles away. They saw nothing until the bus stopped and guards pulled them out in chains. The Security Housing Unit was unlike anything in American corrections. 8 separate pods. Each pod held roughly 100 cells. Each cell was identical. 8 feet wide. 10 feet deep. Poured concrete walls. Poured concrete ceiling. Poured concrete bed. A stainless steel toilet and sink combination bolted to the wall. A steel door with a slot for food trays and handcuffs. No bars. No windows. No sunlight. Ever. The cell had a second door. This one had perforated metal. It allowed air circulation. It allowed guards to see inside. It allowed the inmate to see a concrete wall 3 feet away. That was the view. Concrete. 24 hours a day. For years. Sometimes decades. Inmates in the SHU were allowed out of their cells for 90 minutes a day. They went to an exercise yard. Alone. The yard was a concrete box slightly larger than their cell. 20 feet by 12 feet. Chain link ceiling. Concrete walls. No equipment. No ball. No weights. Just a concrete box with sky above the chain link. Guards watched from catwalks. Other inmates couldn't see you. You couldn't see them. You exercised alone. Then you went back to your cell. 3 times a week, inmates could take a shower. Guards would open the food slot. The inmate would back up to the door and put his hands through the slot. Guards would handcuff him. Then they'd open the cell door. The inmate would shuffle to the shower in chains. He'd have 10 minutes. Cold water. Industrial soap. Then back to the cell. Back to the concrete box. Back to nothing. Mail was monitored. Phone calls were recorded. Visits happened through thick plexiglass with phones. No touching. No passing anything. Guards watched every interaction. Every word was documented. Every gesture was analyzed. The SHU was designed to make communication impossible. For most inmates, this broke them. The isolation destroyed their mental health. Some started talking to themselves. Some screamed at walls. Some stopped talking entirely. Psychologists called it SHU syndrome. The symptoms were predictable. Anxiety, depression, hallucinations, paranoia, memory loss. Some inmates forgot what their own voices sounded like. Some forgot what other human faces looked like beyond guards and helmets. The United Nations would later call prolonged solitary confinement torture. Human rights organizations called Pelican Bay inhumane. Lawyers filed lawsuits arguing the conditions violated the 8th Amendment. But in 1989, California didn't care. They had one goal: break the gangs. End the violence. Whatever it took. For the Aryan Brotherhood, Pelican Bay should have been the end. Their leaders were scattered across different pods. They couldn't see each other. Couldn't talk to each other. Couldn't coordinate. The chain of command was severed. Or so it seemed. What California didn't understand was that the AB had been preparing for this. They'd seen it coming. They knew that eventually the state would try total isolation. So they'd built contingencies. Backup plans. Methods of communication that didn't require face-to-face contact. The first method was fishing lines. Inmates would tear their bedsheets into thin strips. They'd braid the strips together into a strong cord. 30 feet, 40 feet, sometimes longer. They'd attach a weight made from wet toilet paper or soap wrapped in cloth. Then they'd throw it out their food slot. The food slots faced a corridor between cells. If you threw your line at the right angle, it could reach another cell's food slot across the corridor. Or it could slide along the floor to a cell down the line. Inmates would hook their lines together. Pass notes. Pass contraband. Pass orders. Guards found the lines. They conducted searches. They confiscated hundreds of feet of braided fabric. They added rules. Food slots would only open during meals. Inmates had to be cuffed before slots opened. They installed cameras in corridors. They increased patrols. The AB adapted. They used the shower schedule. When an inmate went to shower, he'd pass cells along the way. A guard escorted him, but the guard couldn't watch everywhere. The inmate would drop a note. A tightly rolled piece of paper the size of a cigarette. It would land near another cell's door. That inmate would use a fishing line to retrieve it later. The note would contain coded instructions. Who to recruit. Who to tax. Who to kill. Mail became another channel. Inmates could send letters to family members. The letters were read by prison staff, but staff couldn't catch everything. The AB developed codes. Simple ones at first. Every third word mattered. Later they got sophisticated. Invisible ink made from urine or fruit juice. Messages written between the lines of innocent family letters. You'd need a special light to read them. Or you'd need to know what to look for. Some messages used books. An inmate would reference a specific book. Page 73, word 12. Another AB member would have the same book. He'd look up the page in Word. String enough references together and you had a complete message. Guards couldn't stop it. They couldn't confiscate every book. They couldn't monitor every literary reference. Visitors were the most valuable channel. AB members had wives, girlfriends, family members who visited through the plexiglass. Conversations were recorded, but the AB spoke in code. They talk about recipes, about sports, about memories. Every conversation had two meanings. One for the recording, one for the recipient. A wife might say, "Uncle Jim asked about you." Uncle Jim was code for a specific associate on the outside. Asked about you meant he needed instructions. The inmate would respond with something innocent. Tell him I said the Dodgers will win this year. The Dodgers meant a specific action. When meant approval. The wife would pass the message. The associate would understand. A hit would be ordered. From inside a concrete box where communication was supposed to be impossible. But the most dangerous development came from corruption. Not every guard at Pelican Bay made enough money. Not every guard cared about the job. Some were sympathetic to inmates. Some were just greedy. The AB identified them. Tested them. Recruited them. It started small. A guard would deliver a message from one inmate to another. He'd get paid $500 deposited into an account by an outside associate. Easy money. Low risk. Then the requests got bigger. Smuggle in tobacco. Smuggle in a letter that hadn't been screened. Smuggle in drugs. One correctional officer was caught in 1995. He'd been working at Pelican Bay for 3 years. Investigation revealed he'd smuggled over 40 messages between AB members. He'd moved methamphetamine into the facility. He'd taken bribes totaling $30,000. When they arrested him, they found a list. 6 other guards the AB had compromised. The investigation expanded. More arrests. More corruption exposed. California added more security. More searches. More surveillance. But the SHU had a fundamental problem. Guards had to interact with inmates. Food had to be delivered. Medical care had to be provided. Lawyers had to visit. Every interaction was an opportunity. Every exchange was a potential breach. By 1995, 6 years after Pelican Bay opened, federal investigators were seeing something alarming. Gang activity in California prisons hadn't decreased. It had increased. Murders were up. Drug trafficking was up. The Aryan Brotherhood was stronger than ever. And their leadership was locked in the most secure prison in America. The concrete tomb was supposed to bury the gangs. Instead, it had taught them something valuable. How to operate in total darkness. How to communicate through walls. How to maintain power without physical presence. The AB had evolved. They'd become more disciplined. More patient. More dangerous. And they were just getting started. Because while California was watching the cells, the Aryan Brotherhood was already building something bigger on the outside. Something that would change everything. Something that would make Pelican Bay look like a training ground instead of a prison. The Aryan Brotherhood didn't just survive Pelican Bay. They mastered it. By 1998, they'd turned isolation into an advantage. In general population, rivals could see you coming. Informants could watch your movements. Guards could interrupt your operations. But in the SHU, nobody knew what you were planning. Nobody could see the network growing. Nobody understood how deep it went until it was too late. The recruitment system was brilliant in its simplicity. The AB didn't recruit from inside Pelican Bay. They recruited from the entire California prison system. A white inmate at Corcoran or Folsom would receive a message. Not from anyone he could see. Just a note passed through the prison grapevine. The note would have instructions. Stab this person. Move this package. Collect this debt. Do it and you're noticed. Do it well and you're on the path. The prospect would comply. He'd carry out the hit or the task. Word would travel back through the network. Visitors would relay information. Corrupt guards would confirm details. Coded letters would document the action. The AB leadership in Pelican Bay's SHU would discuss it during their 90-minute yard time. Not face-to-face. They'd use the chain-link ceiling. They'd shout coded phrases that sounded like random conversation. Guards couldn't prove it was gang communication. But the message got through. If the prospect proved reliable, he'd get more tasks. Bigger assignments. More dangerous work. Each success brought him closer to membership. Each failure ended the relationship. Some prospects took years to earn consideration. Some never made it. The AB wasn't desperate for members. They wanted quality. They wanted soldiers who would kill without hesitation and keep silent forever. The blood-in requirement never changed. To become a full member, you had to kill for the brand. Not just any murder. It had to be verified, witnessed, confirmed by multiple sources. And it had to be done knowing you'd go to the SHU for it. That was the test. Are you willing to spend the rest of your life in a concrete box for the AB? If the answer was yes, you were in. If you hesitated, you were out. In 2001, a prospect named Stephen Hicklin was serving time at Salinas Valley State Prison. He'd been working for the AB for 3 years. Moving drugs. Collecting debts. Doing the grunt work. Then he got the message. Time to prove yourself. The target was a white inmate named Thomas Lamb. Lamb had testified against an AB associate in a prison assault case. The brand doesn't forget. The brand doesn't forgive. Hicklin spent 2 weeks planning. He couldn't just attack Lamb anywhere. Too many cameras. Too many guards. He needed the right moment. The right location. He waited until a Saturday morning. Recreation yard. Lamb was playing basketball. Hicklin walked up behind him. He had a shank made from a sharpened metal bed frame. He stabbed Lamb 7 times in the neck and chest. Lamb collapsed on the concrete. Blood poured across the basketball court. Guards rushed in. Hicklin didn't run. He dropped the weapon. He put his hands up. He went to the SHU without a word. Lamb survived, but that didn't matter. Hicklin had proven himself. He'd committed murder in front of witnesses. He'd taken the punishment without complaint. 6 months later, word came down through the network. Stephen Hicklin was now a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He'd spend the next 20 years in solitary confinement. He'd earn his reputation as a killer. And he'd follow every order that came from Pelican Bay without question. But the AB's power extended beyond prison walls. They had associates on the outside. Wives, girlfriends, family members, criminal contacts from their pre-prison lives. These people became the external network. They moved money. They intimidated witnesses. They smuggled contraband into prisons during visits. Some even carried out hits on the outside when AB enemies were released. The money flowed in multiple directions. Inmates throughout California paid protection taxes to the AB. $20 a month per inmate. Paid in cash to outside addresses. Or paid in drugs smuggled to AB members during visits. The cash added up. Tens of thousands every month. The AB used it to pay lawyers for members facing charges. To support families of imprisoned members. To bribe guards. To fund operations. Drug trafficking was even more lucrative. The AB controlled methamphetamine distribution in several California prisons. They'd have outside associates purchase the drugs. Visitors would smuggle it in. Corrupt guards would move it between facilities. Associates inside would sell it to inmates. The profit margin was enormous. Meth that cost $50 outside sold for $500 inside. A single successful smuggling operation could generate tens of thousands in profit. But the system had vulnerabilities. It required communication. And communication left traces. Phone calls were recorded. Letters were read. Visitors were monitored. For 15 years, the AB operated believing they were invisible. They believed their codes were unbreakable. They believed the system couldn't track them. They were wrong. Because in 2002 someone made a mistake. A single phone call that wasn't coded properly. A visitor who said too much. An informant who finally broke. The FBI had been watching for years, collecting evidence, building a case. And what they found was bigger than anyone imagined. Operation Arrow was about to blow the Aryan Brotherhood's invisible empire wide open. The investigation began with a phone call. February 2002. An inmate at High Desert State Prison called his girlfriend. The conversation seemed normal. Talk about family. Talk about bills. Talk about missing each other. But buried in the conversation was a phrase that caught an analyst's attention. Uncle Mike needs the recipe for those cookies we made last summer. The phrase meant nothing to most listeners. To the FBI it meant everything. Uncle Mike was code for Michael Thompson, a high-ranking AB member locked in Pelican Bay's SHU. Recipe meant instructions for a hit. Cookies we made last summer referenced a previous murder. The girlfriend was being told to relay orders for another killing. The FBI had been monitoring AB communications for months. This phone call gave them the break they needed. It was sloppy. It was verifiable. And it opened the door to everything else. Operation Arrow officially launched in March 2002. The FBI assembled a task force of 40 agents. They partnered with California Department of Corrections investigators. They brought in prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The goal was ambitious. Build a federal RICO case against the entire Aryan Brotherhood leadership. Prove they were running a criminal enterprise from inside Pelican Bay. Put them on trial for conspiracy, murder, and racketeering. The FBI started with wiretaps. They got court orders to monitor every phone call from AB members and associates. Hundreds of calls. Thousands of hours of recordings. Analysts worked in shifts, listening to seemingly innocent conversations. Looking for codes. Tracking patterns. Building a database of phrases and their real meanings. The Dodgers won meant approval for a hit. Aunt Sally is sick meant a shipment was delayed. Remember Dad's birthday meant money needed to be moved. They monitored mail. Every letter sent to or from known AB members was copied and analyzed. Forensic specialists used UV lights to reveal invisible ink. Linguists decoded messages hidden in family updates. One letter from Barry Mills at Pelican Bay to his brother contained 73 references to family memories. Every reference was code. Decoded, the letter contained detailed instructions for a methamphetamine distribution network spanning 3 states. The FBI placed informants inside prisons. Some were inmates who agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. Some were undercover agents posing as new transfers. These informants confirmed what the wiretaps suggested. The AB was operating a sophisticated criminal enterprise. They had a hierarchy. A commission of leaders who voted on major decisions. Captains who oversaw regional operations. Soldiers who carried out orders. And hundreds of associates who paid taxes and followed commands. One informant, a former AB associate named Christopher Overton, provided devastating testimony. He'd worked for the brand for 8 years. He'd moved drugs. He'd collected debts. He'd witnessed murders. When he was arrested on federal charges in 2003, he made a choice: cooperate or spend life in prison. He chose cooperation. His testimony would become the foundation of the federal case. Overton described how orders traveled from Pelican Bay to the outside world. AB leaders would relay messages during visits. Wives and girlfriends would memorize coded instructions. They'd leave the prison and make phone calls to associates. The associates would carry out the orders. Money, drugs, or violence. Whatever was needed. The system worked because everyone feared the consequences of failure. Disobey an order and you were marked for death. Cooperate with law enforcement and your family was marked too. The investigation uncovered 40 murders linked to AB orders between 1995 and 2005. Some happened in prisons. Some happened on the streets. All were orchestrated by leaders in the SHU. The FBI documented each one. Witness statements. Phone records. Letters. Financial transactions. They built timelines showing how orders originated in Pelican Bay and resulted in deaths across California and beyond. One case stood out. In 1997, a former AB member named Robert Scully was released from Pelican Bay after serving time in the SHU. He'd left the gang or tried to. The AB doesn't allow retirement. Within weeks, Scully received messages. Come back or face consequences. He refused. In March 1995, Scully and his girlfriend were murdered in their apartment in Sonoma County. 2 AB associates were arrested for the killings. Evidence showed the order came from Barry Mills in Pelican Bay. A phone call. A coded message. 2 people dead. By 2005, the FBI had collected over 10,000 pieces of evidence. Recorded calls. Intercepted letters. Informant testimony. Financial records showing millions of dollars moving through outside accounts. Video surveillance of smuggling operations during prison visits. The case was overwhelming. In July 2005, federal prosecutors unsealed indictments against 40 AB members and associates. 16 were already in custody at Pelican Bay. The rest were arrested across California, Nevada, and Arizona. The lead defendants faced the death penalty. Barry Mills, Tyler Bingham, Edgar Hevell, Christopher Overton, who'd flipped, would testify against them all. The trial was scheduled for 2006. It would be the largest gang prosecution in American history. Prosecutors promised to expose the entire AB operation. Show the public how a prison gang operated from solitary confinement. Prove that Pelican Bay hadn't stopped them. It had only made them more sophisticated. The Aryan Brotherhood had built an empire behind bars. They'd survived every attempt to destroy them. They'd adapted to total isolation. They'd mastered communication through concrete walls. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They'd believed they were untouchable. They'd believed the system couldn't track them. They were about to learn otherwise. The trial would reveal everything. And the consequences would reshape the American prison system forever. The trial began in March 2006. It lasted 14 months. Over 1,000 pieces of evidence. 60 witnesses. Testimony so graphic that jurors asked for breaks. The prosecution laid out the entire AB operation piece by piece. Phone recordings played in open court. Coded letters projected on screens. Former members described murders in detail. The evidence was overwhelming. In August 2006, the verdicts came down. Guilty. 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 4 defendants received the death penalty. Others got life sentences without parole. Federal prosecutors declared victory. The Aryan Brotherhood was finished. But inside Pelican Bay, something else was happening. Something that had nothing to do with the AB. Inmates across all gangs were reaching a breaking point. Years in the SHU. Decades for some. The isolation was destroying them. Men who'd entered the SHU in their 20s were now in their 40s. They'd spent 20 years in concrete boxes. No sunlight. No human contact. No hope of release. The psychological damage was severe. Some went insane. Some committed suicide. All of them suffered. In 2011, inmates started talking. Not across gang lines normally. The Aryan Brotherhood didn't cooperate with the Mexican Mafia. The Black Guerrilla family didn't work with Nuestra Familia. These groups had killed each other for decades. But in the SHU they shared one enemy. The system itself. They were all being tortured. And they decided to do something unprecedented. They decided to work together. The plan was simple but radical. A hunger strike. Refuse all food until California changed its SHU policies. Demand an end to indefinite solitary confinement. Demand an end to gang validation based on association. Demand basic human rights. The organizers knew it was dangerous. Hunger strikes can kill. But they also knew it was their only leverage. Violence hadn't worked. Legal challenges hadn't worked. Maybe public pressure would. On July 1, 2013, the strike began. 6,600 inmates across California prisons refused meals. The number shocked everyone. This wasn't just SHU inmates. This was general population standing in solidarity. The strike spread to other states. Prisoners in Oregon refused food. Illinois, Virginia. The movement was growing. Media coverage exploded. Suddenly the American public was hearing about Pelican Bay. About men locked in boxes for decades. About the psychological damage of total isolation. Todd Ashker was one of the lead organizers. He'd been in Pelican Bay's SHU since 1990. 23 years in an 8x10 concrete cell. California had validated him as an AB associate based on his associations and communications. He denied membership. It didn't matter. Once you were validated, you stayed in the SHU indefinitely. There was no path out. No program you could complete. No sentence you could serve. Just endless isolation. Ashker and other leaders drafted a list of demands. 5 core demands. End group punishment. Abolish debriefing policy that required naming other gang members to get out of SHU. comply with international human rights standards, provide adequate food, create constructive programming and privileges. The demands were reasonable. But California refused to negotiate with inmates. The strike continued. By day 30, inmates were dying. Their bodies were shutting down. Guards forced fluids into some. Medical staff warned of permanent organ damage. Family members begged loved ones to eat. But the strike held. These men had endured years of torture. They'd survived the SHU. They weren't breaking now. Day 40. Day 50. The strike became the longest hunger strike in California prison history. Finally, California blinked. In September 2013, officials agreed to review SHU policies. The strike ended after 60 days. Inmates began eating again. Slowly. Their bodies had to relearn how to process food. Some suffered permanent damage. But they'd won something. They'd forced the system to acknowledge the problem. They'd brought international attention to American solitary confinement practices. The legal fight continued. In 2015, a federal lawsuit forced California to make changes. Inmates could no longer be held in the SHU indefinitely based solely on gang validation. There had to be specific rule violations. The state had to provide a path out of isolation. Hundreds of inmates were transferred from the SHU to general population, including some Aryan Brotherhood members who'd been locked down for decades. That's when the cell phones came in. In general population, security was different. Smuggling was easier. By 2016, contraband cell phones were flooding California prisons. The AB adapted immediately. Members who'd communicated through phishing lines and coded letters now had smartphones. They could text, make calls, use encrypted apps. The invisible network became digital. In 2019, federal prosecutors brought new charges against AB members. They'd use cell phones to orchestrate drug trafficking and murders from general population at New Folsom Prison. The technology had changed. The operation hadn't. The Aryan Brotherhood was still ordering hits, still moving drugs, still running a criminal empire, just with better tools. Today, Pelican Bay's SHU still exists. But it's different. Fewer inmates, stricter rules about who gets sent there, more oversight. The hunger strikes changed California's approach to solitary confinement. Not enough for many critics. Too much for some corrections officials. But the change happened because inmates did the impossible. They united across enemy lines. They endured starvation. They forced the system to see them as human. The Aryan Brotherhood is still active. Smaller than its peak. More fragmented. But still dangerous. Barry Mills died in 2018 at ADX Florence Supermax in Colorado. Tyler Bingham is still on death row. The organization survives. New members are recruited. New operations are planned. The brand adapts. It always has. The concrete box was supposed to end criminal empires. Instead, it taught them how to survive anything. It taught them patience, discipline, how to maintain power through walls, how to communicate through silence. Pelican Bay didn't destroy the Aryan Brotherhood. It refined them, made them harder, made them smarter, made them invisible. And that's the legacy. Not victory or defeat, just evolution. The war between the system and the gangs continues. New tactics, new technology, new methods. But the fundamental truth remains unchanged. As long as prisons exist, criminal organizations will exist inside them. As long as men are caged, some will find ways to maintain power. The concrete tomb couldn't bury them. Nothing can. The empire behind bars endures.
If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content.